Hello friends, today we are with Reva K Singh who runs this magnificent wine magazine Sommelier India. It is for all the wine lovers from all around the world who enjoy life and drink a good wine. Hello Reva ma'am, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
So I want to know that what made you so passionate about wine?
Well, this is actually a magazine for Indians around the world and Indians in India, because for me it was a publishing decision. And my background in wine has been as a consumer. I enjoy wine, I drink wine. The men in my family have always, drunk hard liquor, spirits, but they never thought it was appropriate for women to drink strong liquor.
Is that so?
Yeah, but we had no, restrictions. There were no taboos in our homes. So I grew up drinking wine in a sense, which was sherry and port, and there wasn't very much wine available in India at the time. But because of my husband's job as an international banker, we moved and traveled and entertained a lot. And on one occasion, this was about 12 years ago, 13, 14 years ago, when we returned to India, we discovered that more and more wine was being consumed. And what's more, we were also producing wine, and really good wine. But people didn't know very much about wine.
Yes, definitely.
So that is how I started the magazine. It was a eureka moment and a publishing decision.
Yes.
And we had so many magazines in English, both printed and published in India as well as imported from overseas, but there was just nothing on wine.
Which one is your favorite among the lot?
Well, I'm very happy that the magazine had decided to bring out. I always wanted to have a magazine of my own, and I struck on this subject because it's such a fascinating subject. It's such an interesting subject, and there is much more to wine than just the drink. Wine is, your website, I believe, is called Booze Now.
Boozenow.com.
Yeah. So when I was asked about it, I said, booze now? Why booze? In my book, I don't regard wine as booze in the real sense of the word. I think because wine is produced from grapes and it's an agricultural product, and it should be categorized with food, with gastronomy, with eating, with our meals, not the sort of drink you drink before you eat, or you drink because you enjoy the effects of the alcohol. I think that's a very good way to start, because wine really should be paired with food. But in our country and our culture, we don't usually drink alcohol or drink anything but water with our meals.
Yes,
we drink
that's
before.
our Indian tradition.
Yeah,
they shy away from pairing it with a good wine. No?
Yeah, you don't. It's not a custom. We haven't had that wine drinking culture.
Yes.
In India. So it depends on a variety of things. It can depend on your mood, on who you're with. It depends very much on the time of day, on the weather. If it's hot, then I would like a nice white wine. To start with, a sparkling wine is always a good beginning. And a sparkling wine or champagne, you can't call it champagne if it's made in India or any other part of the world besides Champagne in France. As a rule of thumb, I would tell young wine drinkers, start with a light wine.
Yes.
A white wine which is lighter than a red wine. Start with a white wine and then proceed to a heavier white. A Pinot Grigio or a Sauvignon Blanc would be lighter than, say, a Chardonnay. And then move on to a light red wine. And then it depends on what you're eating. You might have a Pinot Noir or a Cabernet Sauvignon. My current favorite for the whites is Chardonnay.
Chardonnay.
Yeah, and I like Shiraz, because I think our Indian Shiraz wines are very good. Each wine is distinct.
Yes.
And it's different. And it depends on your personal palate. Sommelier in French means wine steward. And in my early copies, I used to actually print it at the bottom of the publication. sommelier, I'd give the pronunciation, French word for wine steward. And a wine steward is your guide in a restaurant. He will advise you which wine to drink. You can discuss it with him. And similarly, the magazine is the reader's guide to wine.
So even when I go out with my friends, there is a question that always arises in my mind, that what to pair it with. Pairing is something that we see is what is the new in for the youngsters. So I would like to know your take on pairing, and what kind of a pairing would you like when it comes to wine?
So when you think about pairing a wine,
Yes.
what you should consider is the weight of the wine. If you're having something light, you should have a lighter wine. The color doesn't matter so much. In the old days, one of the rules, so to speak, and now there are no such rules, it was that you should have wine with fish or white meat and red wine with red meat. But that
is a
not,
cliché.
yeah, it's not cast in concrete. You don't have to follow that. A better rule to follow is consider the weight of a wine. If it's a light wine, you have a bit something.
There is a wide distinction. When it comes to wine, people get choosy about the price.
Yeah.
There is an expensive wine and there is a cheap wine. So what exactly is the difference between the both? And if I am a youngster, probably I would be able to afford a cheap wine. So should we not go for it? Should we stop ourselves, or should we just collect the money and go for the expensive wine?
Very good question. Price should not be an indicator.
Yes.
Entirely.
Yes.
You can have a very good wine that doesn't cost very much, and you can have an expensive wine that is, comme ci comme ça, to use a French word, so, not so good. And very often it has been seen when you have a blind tasting. A blind tasting is when you taste a bottle of wine without knowing the label. The label is concealed. And when people taste wine professionally, you generally taste them blind. Now, the Sommelier India has a Sommelier India tasting panel, and every 2 months before the magazine comes out, we taste wines blind. And then we discuss them, we say which we like better. So it has been found that when people don't see the label, they very often prefer a wine that is cheaper than the really expensive wine.
They do?
Yes. So pricing is not always the criteria.
So one last question, that people generally take wine as a class symbol, right? So what do you think about this statement?
So this is a very interesting question, and in one respect, I think it's a good thing because that will mean they will drink wine more. It may be for the wrong reason, but once they start drinking wine, as long as they're not drinking a bad wine doesn't mean a cheap wine, but it does mean a badly made wine, and therefore it's cheap. There's some wines which are only 100 rupees and all that. I think you should stay away from those. But a wine that has not been properly stored, that's a bad wine. Then it's not going to taste nice. It's going to be bitterish. There's something about it that's not going to taste nice. So be sure about the source of the wine.